They told me not to look at her eyes. Translator, eyes down. Repeat the clause. The protocol marshal rode my earpiece like a conscience with a badge. Voice spiked through the loop so only I could hear. If I breathed too loud, the palace would probably invoice me for turbulence. I stood half behind a marble column that wasn't marble at all, carbon foam with a mimic sheen, reading a treaty off a slate that tasted of nickel on my fingertips. My words braided themselves through the Varela orbital palace in 2 languages, scattered out of ceiling pedals and wall ribs by the resonance grid. Lens drones skittered like chrome gnats. Gravity sat at 98% today. The ceremonial carpet refused to lie flat, its outer edge curling like a cat's tail. Nothing here wanted to be ordinary, and maybe that was the point. The procession flowed past in a tide of vacuum silk and strategic smiles. Senators practiced neutral joy. Advisors practiced the art of never being in the line of fire. Zara Tavar, the crown's bridge, the treaty's anchor, the rumor with a pulse, walked at the center, draped in star thread and expectation. They didn't call her a princess to her face. That was our word. In her culture, she was something sharper, a vector, a promise with consequences. Translator, proceed, the marshal hissed. I proceeded. Clause 12. 12. Bis, because committees believe extra words hold better under stress. I sent their careful language into the hall, and for once, it felt like I was building a scaffold around something alive instead of performing a trick for cameras. Then Zara stopped. Just stopped. The tide drifted on without her, like a river sliding around a stone. Courtiers pretended not to notice, and pretending is the palace's favorite sport. She lifted her head and looked through the glittering air. Found me. I would love to say I was ready. I wasn't. The plan was to be invisible. Government gray suit, courier black shoes, posture like a question mark. I was meant to be a conduit, never a person. But her gaze cut past the drones, the light, the carefully trained expressions, and landed on the man posted near a column, trying to become furniture. Not cold, not calculating, just tired, the kind that sits behind the eyes. And then, beneath the fatigue, a quiet relief. The kind you feel when the heartbeat you feared you had lost resumes with a stubborn thud, as if she had been scanning for something human and finally found it. Translator, the marshal warned. I will, I thought. And didn't. I held her eyes. I kept speaking for the hall and lowered my voice by a fraction for her, a seam inside the seam. The crowd thickened to close the gap she had made. That pressure pushed me a step into the aisle. The censer orchids lining the rail perked and dipped their porcelain heads, drinking our breath, plotting our pulses. The peace lattice unfurled above us, a woven aurora mapping clauses to stars. The palace smelled like ozone and chilled jasmine, and the particular metal note of shields at idle. Zara stepped toward me. Her attendants fanned to block the camera angles. The drone's flight paths hiccuped as the hall's algorithm tried to predict a deviation that didn't fit any of its rehearsal models. The moment we made was small and specific and fully ours. Do not, the marshal began. She raised her hand. Precise, unmistakable, disobedient. Her fingers touched mine. Not a grasp, not a claim. The exact pressure you'd use to test if a thing is warm enough to count as living. Static winked. My slate flashed a red band. Contact. I should have pulled away. The word should rang in my head like a dropped tool. I didn't move. My heartbeat stuttered, tripped, and then ran. She drew in a breath, slow, like the palace's noise had spun down one notch, and she could finally hear the sound of her own ribs. Up close, her ceremonial crown smelled faintly of clean rain and the oil they used to keep star thread from catching on itself. I tilted my mouth away from the throat mic. In her first tongue, Not the diplomatic dialect, not the glittering grammar we had rehearsed. I gave her the storm word people say on ships when the bulkheads groan and you need your voice to hold the room. I'm here. 2 syllables. A knot tied in wind. Her mouth almost laughed and didn't. The ghost of a smile tugged tight to hide from cameras. Not triumph. Recognition. Like running a palm over a map and suddenly locating the ridge of your own country by touch. Around us, the ceremony unfurled, expensive and correct. Hollow constellations braided across the vault. Signatures stitched themselves into light, rows of names burning like a new alphabet. The crowd applauded the idea of a future they wouldn't personally have to bleed for. Somewhere, an archivist signed another consent to erase all the mess in between. Zara's thumb traced the edge of my knuckle, quick as a blink. Then her hand withdrew, and the curtain of attendants closed around her like the sea erasing a footprint. She fell back into motion with the procession, as if the rhythm had always been like this. It hadn't. I could feel it, the tiny shift that meant we were walking to a different drum. Translator, the marshal again. Resume normal tone. As if anything about me could be normal now. I continued anyway. Clause 13, the one about ports and mutual inspections. People always cheer at mutual inspections, as if honesty were naturally symmetrical. My voice came out steady. The grid carried it to every niche, but the part of me that kept time for the hall was no longer the only part keeping time. The hall's clockflower chimes spilled the agreed hour. From the upper tiers, I could see the Liana Gardens glow leaking down like bottled dusk. A dove drone arced, scattering safe confetti that smelled faintly of peppermint. Security staff did their soft-eyed, nothing-to-see-here walk. A pair of officials exchanged the kind of smile that meant they had survived the day and would bill extra. Zara didn't look back. She didn't need to. Whatever this was had happened, and we both knew it could not be written into minutes. It had to live where minutes end, in a pulse, in a palm, in a word that meant endurance whispered under the scripted ones. A princess and a translator, the feeds would say. Or the uglier versions, asset and tool, symbol and mouthpiece. Titles that stack like walls. And yet in that slip of quiet, in the aisle where the carpet buckled against gravity, we had built something that didn't ask permission. Small, warm, stubborn. A spark held cupped between 2 people who should have never been allowed to touch. The applause rose, fell, rose again. The treaty seal pulsed, went still. My loop clicked as the marshal cut the channel, ceremony complete. The crowd exhaled like a single organism. I lowered my slate, and my hand, the one she had touched, still hummed with borrowed static. I told myself to breathe. I told myself to disappear. Instead, I found the line on the floor her foot had crossed and set my shoe beside it, as if marking a place I might have to return to. As if the hall itself had quietly acknowledged a new clause we'd never dare to write. We will find each other again. Protocol decided we should circulate. That meant escort pairs shuffled through pre-selected vistas while cameras pretended to be birds. Somebody arranged it so Zara and I were accidentally aligned at the elevator arch, our roots overlapping like 2 threads pressed by the same thumb. The lift's glass ribs rose through the palace skin. Below us, the throne hall shrank to a luminous coin. Above, the private tier glowed like evening bottled in crystal. Rows of living lianas cascading from ceiling trellises, each filament pulsing with a soft, bioelectric breath. The doors sighed open. Warm air. Plant murmur. Water ticking somewhere behind the wall. Interpreter, said the chaperone assigned to her. Tier 8. Walk 15. Thank you, Zara answered. Then, without turning, she added, in my direction too soft for the chaperone. No titles, Luke. I glanced at the nearest lens. Its iris contracted, as if blushing. Understood. We stepped into the garden path. The stones were grown, not laid, glistening with condensed humidity. Micro-misters threaded the air. Their aerosol tasted faintly of mint and copper, palace-grade sterilant. Between the lianas, little maintenance bots slept like folded spiders, waiting for night mode. I felt the tight drum of ceremony losing time, my pulse falling into something slower. Nearer. The chaperone's shoes whispered behind us for the first 10 steps. Then protocol, satisfied with appearances, let her drift to a parallel path. Our seconds, our oxygen, expanded. I slid my translator loop off my ear. The skin beneath it tingled in relief. Zara reached up and unclipped her thin receiver crown, silver filament and 3 blue stones like raindrops, and tucked it into a pocket hidden in the fall of her sleeve. Without the devices, the garden sounded honest. Real water. Real plant size. The small hush that happens when 2 people decide they aren't going to lie. No titles, she said again, as if tasting the rule and finding it kinder than the others. You kept your voice low in the hall. Why? We walked shoulder to shoulder. The lianas woke as we passed, their light swelling in slow waves. It painted her profile in warm gold and river green. My answer arrived before I could refine it into something that would keep me safe. Because I want to hear you, I said, and not the noise around you. She made a sound, half laugh, half release. You say it like a practical thing. It is. I am not good at worship. I am good at signal to noise. Signal to noise. She rolled it like a charm against her tongue. Where did you get trained to say a sentence like that? Municipal relay in Portland, I said. During the outages, we learned to count silences. My mom kept letters in boxes. Paper keeps its own weather. You listen. You understand it. And you understand me. Not yet, I said. I'm trying to start honestly. Honesty is expensive here. I'm public sector. I smiled. I can't afford anything else. The path curved around a pool where tiny fish flickered like misplaced commas. As we slowed, she reached to adjust my cuff. No ceremony in it, just neatness. Her fingers were warm and sure. The lianas reacted, brightening, as if they recognized touch as a kind of speech. I held still while she smoothed the fabric, her knuckle ghosting my wrist bone. The pressure lasted 1 heartbeat longer than etiquette allows. Your hands are cold, she said. Ceremonial climate control, I said. They keep it a degree down so the jewels don't sweat. And your pulse? She wasn't teasing. She was measuring something invisible. Up. She looked pleased by that. So quiet and serious my chest ached. We reached a glass balcony nested into the curve of the garden. The city arced below. Night work on the skin of the planet, and the station's docking lattice like a script laid over it. 2 alphabets learning to share a page. Freight ferries moved on their rails, silent from here. You could see their guidance lasers thread and unthread. Above us, the palace canopy rolled back in a slow arc. It showed a slice of space like wet ink. Zara took the rail with both hands, closing her eyes. The garden's color stroked her cheekbones. For a second, there was no crown, no witnessing crowd, just a woman steadying herself against height and history. I feel calm with you, she said. In English, simple as a porch light. I tried to collect a correct answer and came up with the truth instead. I keep counting my luck, I said, and having to start over. She turned. We were close enough that my chest noted the exact angle of her shoulder pressing air toward me. Close enough to see a freckle under her left eye that feeds never showed. Close enough that if we were other people, in another place, I would lower my mouth and find out if the word calm could taste like anything sweet. We didn't kiss. We knew we shouldn't. The paws stretched, fine and hot, and the garden leaned in like an audience, holding breath. Somewhere behind the trellis, a camera blinked. Or maybe it was a firefly. I wanted to believe that. She exhaled and looked past me at the city, then up into the station's vault. When I was little, she said, I named the bright ones, the stars. I thought if I knew their names they would stop moving. They never did. What did you call them? Promises. She smiled with one corner of her mouth. Later, debts. The word hit me like a step into cold water. How many do you owe? Enough that my curators never run out of reasons to count me. Her fingers tightened on the rail, then loosened. She glanced at my hand resting beside hers, 1 inch of air between them. May I? The question undid me more than any touch could have. I turned my palm. She laid hers into it, not the way you seize something you're owed, but the way you test whether warmth is real. The lianas brightened again. The biolights climbed her sleeve like shy lightning. I heard the chaperone on the other path stop and pretend to read a plaque. My mother, Zara said, still looking out, believes calm is a failure of imagination. Mine thinks calm is proof that we're making good choices. I squeezed, gentle. Both mothers can be wrong. Dangerous sentence. True sentence. She laughed, a short breath through her nose, then grew thoughtful. Your voice in the hall cut under the grid, she said. It felt like someone finding my pulse and counting with me. I didn't know I needed that until it was there. I didn't know I was allowed. You are not allowed, she said. That makes it better. We stood like that, hands easy, shoulders nearly touching, while the planet turned and the station pretended not to sway. My earlier life, deliveries, loops, the long commute along the river tram where everyone stares at the same city and dreams different rents, felt like a coat I'd shrugged off and folded for later. Her life, edicts, curated smiles, the mathematics of being valuable, felt like armor she set on the rail to see if it grew moss. Tell me something ordinary, she said suddenly. Ordinary? Anchor me. A cheap thing. A small thing. Okay, I said. There's a baker on Hawthorne who refuses to install a drone dock. He says if croissants arrive by quadcopter, they don't deserve to be eaten. He tapes handmade signs on the window. No fly zone. The signs melt when it rains. He makes new ones. She watched my mouth as if translating my breath. I can see him. He has a burn on his wrist in the shape of a half moon. Now I can see you standing across from him, counting how much cash you have. I always come up $1 short, I confessed. He always pretends he didn't see. Your city sounds like good weather. It can be. When the wind is right, when the outages hold. She nodded. I would like to be somewhere that didn't require ceremony to breathe. We're here, I said. For tonight, she agreed. And I heard the weight on that word. Her shoulder skimmed mine. It wasn't an accident. Heat spoke the language I'm best at. My body leaned half a degree. Her breath touched my lower lip and hovered. We balanced there, at the edge of a rule we couldn't afford to break, and maybe could no longer afford to keep. The garden hummed. The city swept its lights like a hand smoothing a quilt. The station's ribs sighed. We didn't kiss. The not kiss burned hotter than heat. It salted my mouth with patience. It made a map of the inches between us and labeled them with words I hadn't earned yet. Wait. And soon. And worth it. Walk? She asked, voice a note lower. Walk, I said. We let our hands fall, but close enough that the backs brushed like metronomes, sharing a tempo. As we moved beneath the liana's slow, waking glow, I knew two things that had nothing to do with treaties. First, that I could spend the rest of my life reducing the noise around this woman. Second, that the palace, the world, would not like what happened to its rules when she and I learned each other's names for light. Protocol wrote it down as rest interval. The palace translated that to a corridor of soft light and doors that swallowed sound. The attendants guided us there with the gentleness you use on sleeping animals. The chaperone kept 3 paces back, hands clasped, eyes politely unfocused. Even the lens drones slowed, as if yawning. We reached an oval arch, veined with copper. Beyond it, the chamber of resonance waited, a hush carved into architecture. Acoustic capsules hung like lanterns, each a glass seed with a door pedal you could draw shut. Beneath them, low couches grew from the floor like patient stones. The ceiling glowed the color of warm tea. Somewhere, unseen dampers pulled the hallway's noise into their mouths and held it there. 15 minutes, the chaperone murmured, and presented a tray with 2 cups and a dish of pale fruit that looked like moons, with bites already missing. Then she retreated to a marked square and became furniture. Zara lifted one of the cups, sniffed, smiled. Cloven nightleaf, a favorite. I took the other and pretended to be someone who belonged here. Steam touched my lip. The cup vibrated faintly. The chamber used resonance to keep liquids warm without coils. Even the tea obeyed frequency. Choose a capsule? I asked. She tipped her head toward one near the back, where the wall curved and the garden glow bled through a pattern of cutouts. We stepped inside and pulled the pedal. The world tightened to our size. The air tasted like rain taught to behave. We sat. Not opposite. Angled. Knees nearly touching. The way people do when they don't want to be caught wanting to be close. Without the receiver crown and translator loop, my skull felt newly mine. A small, bright ache had settled behind my eyes. The day's light had been too polished. I set the cup on a built-in ledge and rubbed the bridge of my nose. Headache? She asked. Ceremonial grammar, I said. It's heavier than it looks. She made a sympathetic noise and, without hesitation, touched 2 fingers to a point near my temple. Hold, she said softly. Not a command, more like a calibration. Breathe. I did. Heat pooled under her touch. The ache thinned, then lengthened into a line I could name and follow. She removed her hand, and the absence was as articulate as the contact. My mother would say pain clarifies loyalty, she said. I say pain muddies everything. Agreed, I said. But the tea helps. You would fix a kingdom with tea? I would start with it at least, then work my way up to loss. She laughed, and the chamber decided to keep her laugh and play it back to us a half-beat later at a lower volume, like an echo trained to be kind. I felt my chest unlock another notch. Tell me something you chose, she said. My job, I said. Everyone assumes I failed up into public service. I didn't. I wanted to be the voice that keeps bridges standing when people panic. And does it work? Sometimes, I said. When the bridge believes me. She studied my mouth, then my hands. Your mother keeps letters in boxes. You said that. Still does, I said. They smell like dust and oranges. Whenever our building power cut, we'd light the stove and boil water and sit on the floor and read. Paper has a way of not caring about outages. Paper, she repeated, as if tasting a preserved fruit. Your turn, I said. Something you chose. She looked at the capsule's clear wall, at our reflected silhouettes. Not today, she said. Today, I obeyed. A beat. But when I was small and the ship slept, I named stars without asking permission. My curator told me not to waste names. I wasted hundreds. I'm glad you did. So am I. We drank. The chamber hummed like a cat that had been taught to harmonize with a heart. The pauses between us grew longer, not because we ran out of words, but because we were watching the words change shape before they landed. She traced a line along my collar with a fingertip, as if measuring a seam. My breath stumbled. Her gaze didn't waver. "You're shaking," she said. "I am," I admitted. "From fear? From finally landing." She exhaled, small and fierce, like a diver hitting air. "I mislike the word princess," she said. "In my house, I am a system, a vector, a curated instrument." "In my mouth," I said. "You're a person who likes clove tea and names light." A color climbed her neck, not embarrassment, heat. "Names are expensive," she whispered. "So are silences." We leaned in, the way two magnets negotiate the last half-inch. My knee brushed her skirt. She didn't move away. She set her cup aside with that precise care I had seen in the hall, the species of control that makes accidents impossible. "I should ask permission," I said. "You did earlier," she said. "You said, 'I'm here.' That was permission to exist. Is this permitted?" "No," she said, and smiled, not unkindly. "That makes it precious." We kissed. Slow, grateful, unhurried. The kind that happens when nobody is taking something from anyone. Her mouth was warm and tasted like clove and a mineral sweetness I couldn't place. The capsule's acoustics folded the sound of our breath into a private weather. I felt my shoulders drop the last of the posture they'd carried all day. When we parted, she didn't move far. Her forehead rested against mine. "Now I can only hear you," she said. Not a metaphor. The chamber had damped the world to a single frequency and tuned it to my breathing. I smiled. "Good. I can only count you." We kissed again, steadier. No hurry to own, only the clean intention to stay. Her hand slipped to the back of my neck. Mine found the line of her jaw and learned it. My body kept trying to memorize angles the way the city learns the river each spring. When we eased apart, she tucked herself into the corner of the couch, one knee shingled over mine like she was practicing how to share space. "They will pull us apart," she said. "Not a threat, a weather report." "They can try," I said. It sounded brave until I remembered budgets and guns and contracts that call love a breach of protocol. "Luke," she said, "listen." I did. "There are things you don't know," she said, "about the treaty, about me, about why my curators arranged the garden, the capsules, the chance to be seen near you." Ice moved under my ribs. "They arranged this?" "Not this," she said quickly, and touched my wrist as if to keep the heat from dropping. "Not us, but the proximity, the stories, the rumor of me choosing a human. It's an old lever where I come from. They pull it when they need to move walls without admitting to force." I tried to smile and couldn't quite find the muscles for it. "So I'm useful." "You were supposed to be," she said. "A symbol with warm eyes, a soft way to threaten hard men. But the plan did not consider you would speak in the storm word, or that I would answer." I leaned back, let that sit. The capsule's glass held our reflections like two coins resting heads together. "If I walk away now," I said, "do I keep you safe or leave you in their machine?" "If you walk away, they pick another man with a similar face, and I remain arranged," she said. "If you stay," her mouth almost broke. "If you stay, they will try to break you to demonstrate that I am still theirs." "Good to know," I said, because humor is a ladder when the floor drops. "Saves time?" Her fingers threaded mine. "I am telling you, because I won't purchase you with ignorance," she said. "The cost must be named." She paused like a tightrope walker feeling for the next wire. "I thought I understood the price of control. I didn't understand the price of warmth." "Warmth is cheap," I said. "You only have to sit near it." "It is expensive here," she said. "Everything kind is contraband." "Then let's smuggle," I said. She looked at me as if I had invented a tool she'd needed all year. "Together," she said. "Together," I echoed, and the chamber caught the word and kept it glowing, as if language could be a lantern. We fell into quiet. I told her about the river trams in winter, the way everyone breathes fog into the car, and for 10 stops, you live inside a cloud that smells like wool and coffee. She told me about sleeping in gravity nets as a child, how if you breathed too sharply, the net answered with a polite squeeze to remind your lungs the ship was listening. I told her about my father leaving a toolbox behind, and how sometimes I open it just to hold a wrench heavy enough to silence the room. She told me about a corridor on her ship lined with mirrors that show you as you will be if you obey, and how children learn early to walk with their chin high so the future cannot bully them. We edged closer without closing the last inch, not to escalate, but to rest. Rest felt like its own rebellion. My hand found the inside seam of her sleeve and waited. Her hand climbed to my shoulder and stayed. A soft chime pealed outside the capsule. 15 minutes were almost something else. Zara's eyes flicked toward the door, then back to me, decision setting in her mouth. "They will take me to greet a delegation," she said. "You will be redirected to Dock 2 with a pretext. People will be positioned. A camera will catch the moment I glance back." "And do you?" "I do," she said. "But not for the story they want." "We walk?" I asked. "We walk," she said, and something fierce and private lit in both of us, like a match struck in a pantry. We stood. I straightened my jacket. She smoothed my collar with the same small, precise motion that had undone me in the garden. Then her knuckles brushed my throat, not by accident. The chamber, loyal to its last beat, gentled the small sound I made and gave it back sweeter. At the door pedal, she paused. "One more thing," she said. "In my language, there is a verb that means to alter the plan in order to keep a person safe without telling them. It is usually a sin. What is it called?" She spoke the word. It stroked my ear like velvet with a blade stitched inside. "Do not do that to me," she said. "If we must break, let it be for a truth we can both point to." "I won't smuggle you out of yourself," I said. "Good," she whispered. Then she leaned in and kissed me once more, a single, steady press that felt like an oath signed with the smallest possible flourish. We opened the capsule and stepped back into the corridor's twilight. The chaperone woke from furniture and fell into step. The lenses resumed their practiced curiosity. The palace inhaled us the way a sea inhales 2 swimmers who don't yet know where the rip current begins. We walked toward the junction that would split us. Our shoulders brushed. We didn't reach for hands. We didn't need to. The chamber's heat had followed us, clinging like a discreet witness under our clothes. At the fork, her escort peeled toward the high doors. My route arrowed thin and practical toward the docks. She glanced back because that was the story. I met her eyes and gave her a nod that meant more than cameras could translate. "I see you. I am already moving." The siren ripped the night. The siren knifed through the corridor just as we split, not the tidy chime they use for photo opportunities, the true alarm, the one that teaches your bones a new vowel. Security turned with the same face they use for storms. The chaperone pivoted into a wall panel that became a door. The lenses rose like a flock flushed from grass. I didn't run. I tucked my slate beneath my jacket and walked. Ceremony had taught me one useful thing. Panic has a gate. If you don't wear it, doors open. "Arrest route," someone said over the corridor PA in a voice designed to mean nothing. Section 5. Present asset. Asset. The word scraped. I cut left through a service passage the color of quiet steel and found the shadow of Zara's path running parallel. 2 floors down, I knew the corridors braided around the supply spine and met in the dock arcade. If I could reach the angle where she'd have to slow, we could choose together instead of being assigned. The siren shifted, a descending tone that meant the treaty was now a stage set, and the palace preferred a different play. Guards flowed into positions only they could see on their visors. A pair of them clocked my badge and waved me past with professional boredom. At the next junction, an officer lifted a hand, palm out. "Hold." I pulled my courier pass and let it flash. "Delivery, outer ring," I said, and put the exact fatigue in my voice that meant, "Let me do my job, so your job looks easy." He hesitated. 2 heartbeats. 3. His visor ticked through my data and didn't like the gaps. When you serve 3 agencies and none of them pay on time, your file looks like a patchwork coat. "Officer," I said, lowering my voice to the pitch that makes words feel like routine. "If I'm late, the dock boss logs it and your metrics dip." He exhaled, waved me through. The floor changed under my shoes from ceremonial gloss to the textured strip that keeps you upright when gravity hiccups. The air tasted of coolant and clean oil. I matched the corridor's pulse and rehearsed the sentence I would use if I met her in the open. "We're leaving. Not you. We." Ahead, a side door sighed and released 2 attendants dragging a case shaped like a harp. One glanced up, recognized my uniform, and angled away. The other didn't look at me at all, because people carrying sanctioned burdens never look for help. I slid behind them, used their bulk as cover, and burned 20 meters closer to where Zara would be trapped briefly by a policy-compliant bottleneck. "Section 5 secured," the PA intoned. "Proceed with dignity." I could see the turn where her corridor would join mine. I felt the exact moment her presence broke the air. Pressure changing, like the river near a pier. Then I saw her. She walked between 2 ranks of guards with the calm of a pilot who knows the ship listens. No crown. No smile. A small storm with hands steady at her sides. When her eyes found me, it wasn't a surprise. It was a confirmation of a math we'd done separately. "Princess," a guard corrected lazily into his shoulder, as if reminding the building. "Present." "Officer," I said, stepping in from the service line with my best bored face. "Asset transfer. Dock authorization. She's scheduled for an inspection briefing on the outer ring." "Negative," the lead guard said. "Detain for review." Zara watched me with the patience of a fuse learning its job. I breathed once, and in that breath, I reached for the only tool I had. The way rules feel to people who enforce them. Not what they say. What they mean when someone has to write it up later. "You run this as an arrest," I told the lead, low and practical. "And you put your names on the first day of a war. You move her under the language of inspection, and you get to pretend nothing broke." I let him see the dull arithmetic of career survival. "Your choice." A beat. He disliked me for telling the truth out loud. He liked me for telling it in time. "Escort," he said finally. "Outer ring. 2 guards." He gestured to the flank. The formation shifted around us without acknowledging that a decision had been made. The palace prefers to believe it is inevitable. We walked. I slipped my hand close enough to Zara's that if the corridor lurched, we'd already be catching each other. I couldn't hold it. I could be an option. "You can stay," she said softly, lips barely moving. "This isn't your fight." "It is," I said. And because she had asked for true nouns, I gave her one. "You are." A shadow of a smile. "Irregular man." "Public sector," I said. "We do what we can with what we have." We turned into the dock arcade, a long curve of airlocks, each with a window showing a slice of hard night. On the far side, the ring's train slid by, lights counting even seconds. A steward in orange stood at a console pretending to reconcile cargo. The siren dimmed to a pulse, like a second, faster heart. A glass panel on my right flashed a list of vessels. I scanned for anything small enough to hide our decision inside it. Shuttle 7K, local loop. Shuttle 9D, maintenance. Shuttle 12A, diplomatic tender, grounded by the alarm. Maintenance. I leaned toward the nearest guard with the posture of a man bored by his own competence. If we wait for the tender, I said, we invite an audience. Take 9D. Protocol calls it pre-transfer stabilization. He frowned. Does it? It will, when you file it. I didn't look at Zara. Believe me, I have written that sentence 4 times this year. He gestured. The steward's shoulders raised, dropped, as if relief had hands. We moved to 9D. Its hull sat like a patient fish. I palmed the control, the door sighed, and the air inside smelled of clean filters and a mechanic's mint gum. Ms. Tavar, I said, in the tone you use with dignitaries and skittish dogs. Step through. She met my eyes. A whole answer passed without anyone hearing it. She stepped. Inside the airlock, the world tightened to a circle of light, and a list of instructions nobody reads. The guards took their places like chess pieces with good posture. I put my back to the inner door, and my hand to the manual seal. Hold, the lead said. We held. Control requests confirmation, he said after a static cough in his ear. You'll want to be quick, I said. Any slower, and the cameras catch up. He made a face like a night spent filling out forms. Proceed. The inner door unlipped. The shuttle's small belly waited. A flicker of dizziness told me the ring thrummed with an electrical load it hadn't planned for. Somewhere, someone had rerouted power to a problem with a fancy name. We filed in. The steward sealed us. The guards took the forward jump seats because habit outranks orders. I slid into the rear beside Zara and buckled my belt with the easy gentleness of a man tying a knot around something he intends to keep. The shuttle hummed awake. Dock clamps exhaled. My heart hammered like a tech learning drums. I leaned close enough to talk without the cabin mic catching it.